Hey guys, it's Payne. I'm going to do a video real quick, this one for UFC 289. Starting off with Dan Ige against Nate Landwehr. This one's going to be a really good fight. Dan Ige is one of the more aggressive fighters in his division, and so is Nate Landwehr, so I'm expecting fireworks in this one. But Dan Ige, he won his last fight against Damon Jackson, coming off of 3 losses before that, but aside from that, he is one of the best, most well-rounded fighters in his division. And in this fight, you'll see him probably be a bit more patient than he normally is, because like I said, he is one of the more aggressive fighters in his division. He's a very well-rounded guy. He can do it all, but he definitely prefers to stand. But Dan Ige, he also has the ability to definitely be able to handle himself on the ground should it come to that point, which I'm sure we'll probably see this fight go to the ground at some point, but I think it's going to be wild exchanges along with sudden moves to the ground. Specifically Dan Ige, he has really good timing when it comes to shooting for takedowns. And while Landwehr does have a lot of good takedown defense, I don't know if he'll be able to stop the timing and perfect execution of Dan Ige's takedowns. However, I'm confident that Nate will be able to handle himself on the ground just as he has in most of his other fights. And Nate Landwehr is a guy who really likes to make his fights dirty, ugly, and very grimy. He likes to turn it into slugfest. He does thrive in the fire when it comes to the heat of battle. When he's throwing caution to the wind, it seems to be that that's when he's at his best. Dan Ige does tend to be quite aggressive in his fights. Now, I think Dan's going to be a bit more patient in this fight because of Nate's aggressiveness. However, Nate's going to keep coming forward, and I think he's going to force Dan Ige to either engage in a slugfest or shoot for a takedown. And also, both of these guys will take absolutely any opportunity to go for the finish. Anytime they sense their opponent is in danger, they're going to be very persistent in the attempt to at least try to finish. So I think this fight's going to be an extremely exciting fight, and it really could go either way. But one thing that does stand out to me is Nate has a lot of heart. Whether he's getting hurt or he's doing the punishing, it doesn't matter. He's going to be in there in the fire, regardless of what's going on, win or lose. And more importantly, he's going to make it a very tough fight. And I think I'm going to side with Nate Landwehr in this one. He's got a lot of momentum coming into this fight, and I think he's got what it takes to keep moving forward. So for this one, I'm going to take Nate Landwehr. And on to the next fight, we've got Adam Fugit against Mike Malott. Both these guys kind of young into their careers inside of the UFC. Malott has won his last 4 fights, while Fugit has gone 1-1 inside of the UFC. And the hype surrounding Malott when he first came into the UFC was that he's a Canadian who can wrestle very well, similarly to George St. Pierre. While he isn't on that same level yet, we have seen Mike Malott be able to mix it up very well, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. Now, Fugit, from what we've seen inside of the UFC, he does have a very strong chin. He can take a shot. But along with that, he's very flat-footed. He does like to kind of turn his fights a bit grimy, and he's got a real awkward fighting style when it comes to on the feet at least. But as far as shooting for takedowns, he doesn't seem to always commit to every takedown. Sometimes he will, but a lot of the times he doesn't, and it seems more like it's in an attempt to set something else up. But Mike Malott, on the other hand, is a very technical striker, and I would say he's a more technical striker than Fugit is. He's a 2009 National Light Contact Kickboxing Champion, along with being a 4-time no-gi tournament Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. But like I said, on the feet, he is a more technical striker. He's got better footwork. He does move around a lot more than Fugit does. And from what I've seen, he's been able to set up strikes better than Fugit does. And even on the ground too, Malott has shown he's very capable of handling himself and even finishing fights on the ground. He's got 4 knockouts, 5 submissions, no decisions, meaning every single win that he has on his record has come by way of finish. And I feel like this one's probably the easiest fight for me to pick, and in this one I'm going to be taking Mike Malott. Which brings us to our co-main event, which is without a doubt the people's main event, in my opinion, and I think it's going to be the most exciting fight on the card. Charles Oliveira against Beneil Dariush. This is going to be a really good fight. It's definitely going to be very interesting, and from what I've seen among the MMA community, everyone seems pretty dead even on who they think is going to win. It seems 50-50 down the middle, with half of the fans thinking that Charles is going to win and the other half thinking that Benny's going to win. Now, Beneil Dariush is on an 8-fight winning streak right now. He is a veteran not only of the sport, but also in the UFC as well. And he's shown that he's more than capable of doing all of it. From standing on the feet, fighting real technical, to brawling on the feet, to going to the ground in sudden exchanges, and also taking down his opponents and just completely dominating them throughout the fight. If Benny wins this fight, there's no doubt about it, he's going to be fighting for a title next. And I can't quite say the same for Charles Oliveira. It's not quite as certain for him. But as you know, Charles is a big fan favorite at this point. With 9 knockouts, 21 submissions, and 3 decisions on his record, Charles is not the kind of guy to mess around with. Benny's going to come into this fight serious as he always does, but if he makes one single mistake, Charles will capitalize on it. And more often than not, we've seen Charles be able to capitalize on mistakes that his opponents have made and come out with a win on top of it. Now, he did lose his last fight to Islam Makhachev, but Islam has been on a roll for quite some time now. And let's not forget that before that, he was trailblazing through the lightweight division on his way to the title, and then when he grabbed the title, he was beating everybody still. I remember I had been picking against Charles Oliveira for years on end. While he was a guy that I very much liked, he continued to be put into fights where I thought his opponent would win. And in his last fight, I did pick Charles. So maybe I cursed him. But I gotta be honest, this fight, it seems so dead even, and I still love Charles. Even though I picked against him for so long, that doesn't mean that I didn't like the guy. It doesn't mean that I wasn't rooting for the guy. He was just in several fights where it seemed like his opponent had an obvious advantage and would win the fight. And in all of those fights, it got real dicey for a lot of them. I mean, there are a lot of different instances where he did almost lose that title, yet he managed to hold on to it and beat just about anybody in his path. And I feel like he's going to do the same thing to Benny Dariush. I see this one going insane. I think this one's going to be the best fight of the night. I mean, there is absolutely no way that either one of these guys is going to go into there come Saturday night and completely dominate the fight in every fashion. But for this one, I am taking Charles Oliveira. So now that brings us to the main event of UFC 289. The female GOAT of combat sports entirely is back come Saturday night in a fight where she was supposed to fight Juliana Pena for the third time. But instead, Juliana got injured, and as a result, Irene Aldana is stepping in on only a couple of weeks' notice. And I gotta be honest, Irene Aldana seems to have a very good chance of winning this fight. I mean, you look at Amanda Nunes, and Amanda Nunes is borderline invincible. I mean, the running theory is that the only reason she lost to Juliana Pena is the fact that she got too comfortable in her winning ways and assumed that that fight was going to be easy as well. But it seems like in her last fight, where she reclaimed the title against Juliana Pena, it seemed like she wasn't as comfortable as she had been before, and it seemed like she was able to reignite that fire that brought her to claim the title in the first place. Obviously, she's got probably the largest amount of knockout power that you'll ever find in a women's fighter. She's very good all around. I mean, on the feet, on the ground, everywhere you can imagine, and she will most likely have a strength advantage in this fight. As we know, Amanda Nunes can get quite aggressive in her fights, as she normally does, and you'll normally see her get the finish. But I think she's got to play it a bit more patient against Irene Aldana, because Irene Aldana, who has won her last 2 fights, is one of the best boxers that you'll find in the bantamweight division. And along with that, she prefers to stand. If you watch her past fights, you'll quickly notice she's a power striker who is a very technical striker at the same time. She's very patient, smart, and tactical with the way that she approaches her fights, regardless of who's standing in front of her. And she can take a big shot. The only question is, can she take Amanda Nunes' shots? But along with being one of the best boxers in the bantamweight division, she's got great footwork to go along with that strike, and she rarely puts herself into vulnerable positions. She's going to look to make this fight very patient and a bit laid back, and I think she's going to strike when she thinks the opportunity's right, because we've seen her be able to do that in the past. And on the feet, I think Amanda Nunes is going to be tested in this one. However, on the ground, I feel like that's where Aldana is going to be at the biggest disadvantage in the fight. If Nunes can grab a hold of her, I think the strength advantage, along with the black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the history that Amanda Nunes has in Jiu-Jitsu, I think it's going to trump anything that Irene Aldana can do on the ground. But she's got good takedown defense to go along with it. But I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. And I gotta be honest, if Irene Aldana was coming into this fight on a full training camp, I think she'd have a much better chance to win this fight. But seeing as she's coming into this fight on only a couple of weeks' notice, I feel like that's just not enough time to train for someone like Amanda Nunes. And while if she were to win over Amanda Nunes, this would make her the 3rd Mexican-born champion in the UFC's history. I don't quite count interim titles as actual championships, so I'm sorry, Yair. But it would be a very big moment in MMA history, especially for the Mexicans who love this sport. However, I just don't see her being able to get the job done against Amanda Nunes come Saturday night. So for this fight, I'm going to take Amanda Nunes. So to recap, I'm taking Nate Landwehr, Mike Malott, Charles Oliveira, and Amanda Nunes. And it looks like that's all I got for y'all. Hit like, subscribe, and all that.